So, HBO has made another casting decision, as Aaron Zhao has now been cast as Terry Boot from Ravenclaw. This is very interesting in my opinion because it once again confirms my belief that the show is going to include a lot more side characters pretty early on to make the whole Hogwarts life and student experience seem more believable. This is also good timing, as in today's episode we are going to get an introduction to some of Harry's other classmates that aren't in Gryffindor. By the end of the episode we will also be thrown straight into the major mystery of the season. So let's jump into my vision of Harry Potter Season 2, Episode 3, The Writing on the Wall. Previously on Harry Potter, we'll recap the main story beats so far, starting with Dobby warning Harry not to return to Hogwarts, the introduction to Gilderoy Lockhart, and the whole sequence of events with Harry and Ron being unable to get through the barrier at King's Cross. And I especially want the recap to emphasise Dobby's warning due to the major cliffhanger this episode will end on. We then see the cold open for this episode. Similar to how in Season 1 we saw excerpts from the Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them book when we were looking at different magical creatures, we will now see an animated page about Cornish pixies being narrated by Newt Scamander. This will be pretty brief as there is a lot to cram into this episode, but the short clip will end with Scamander saying to never let Cornish pixies loose, as they will cause chaos. The title sequence then rolls. Before we properly jump into this episode, please remember to hit the subscribe button, like the video, and also hit the notification bell so you are kept up to date with this season. We then open at breakfast in the Great Hall, the day after Harry and Ron's dramatic arrival at Hogwarts, and we will get the scene like in the movie, with Ron receiving the howler from Mrs. Weasley. This will actually be pretty much identical to the movie, as one thing I liked about this scene was that they ripped the letter right out of the novel, with it being word for word what was in the book. The rest of Sequence 1 will then focus on Harry's first day of the new term. As I mentioned in my Season 1 breakdowns, I really want the show to explore more about the student experience and different classes and daily life at Hogwarts. Obviously, as the story heats up and we follow the mystery more closely, we will run out of time for moments like this, so it's important to get these moments in early. The first class of the day is Herbology, and the Herbology scene will be similar to the movie, with a couple of key changes and additions. Firstly, before class, Harry is apprehended by Gilderoy Lockhart. I think Kenneth Branagh did an excellent job as Lockhart in the movies, however, I don't think we saw enough of his overall character shine through. We definitely saw him being a blithering idiot who almost fooled himself into believing he's a competent wizard, however we didn't see a great deal of just how delusional he is when it comes to his fame. This definitely comes through in this short conversation with Harry before Herbology, where he suggests that he's far more famous than Harry, even though Harry is probably the most famous person in the world. As I said though, the actual Herbology class itself with the mandrakes will be very similar to the movie, but we will also see the introduction of Justin Finch Fletchley, where he reveals that he's a Muggle-born, as this will become pretty important later in the season. We then move into a montage which covers the next portion of Harry's day, with him attending different classes and eating lunch, before the montage ends with the Gryffindors waiting outside the Defense Against the Dark Arts classroom for their first class with Lockhart. Before they enter, however, we get the introduction to Colin Creevey, who takes a picture of Harry, asks him to sign it, before Draco Malfoy arrives to start taunting Harry, and to make matters worse, Gilderoy Lockhart then appears and leads Harry into the classroom, giving him another lecture about fame. We then have the scene with Lockhart's first class, and I honestly find this scene in the book absolutely hilarious. They did actually film this scene for the Chamber of Secrets movie, but it ended up being cut. Essentially, Lockhart hands out quiz sheets where all of the questions are about him. It's such a shame that this was deleted from the movie, as once again it kind of expands Lockhart's character even more, but the movie was incredibly long already, so I can kind of understand it. Sequence 1 then ends with a frantic action sequence, very much like the movie, when Lockhart sets a bunch of Cornish pixies free and tasks Harry, Ron and Hermione with rounding them all up. Sequence 2 of the episode opens up with Harry lying in bed. Suddenly we see Oliver Wood's face loom out the darkness with a manic expression, telling Harry to get up for Quidditch practice. We then cut to Harry arriving at the Quidditch pitch to join the rest of the team in the changing rooms, and we'll see a short scene of Oliver Wood's incredibly dry team talk, with the team all nodding off here and there, sitting in a stupor. I kind of envision this like in the History of Magic quest in Hogwarts Legacy, where the main goal of the quest is to literally just stay awake. The camera will dim in and out, with Harry struggling to keep his eyes open before Wood suddenly tells everybody to get up and go out onto the pitch. We then see a couple of brief shots of the team training before the Slytherin team arrive. The following scene then plays out like the movie, with the reveal of Malfoy as the new Slytherin Seeker, the 7 Nimbus 2001s, and the moment with Malfoy calling Hermione a mudblood. And just like in the movie, Ron tries to hex Malfoy, but his wand backfires and he begins burping slugs everywhere. Harry and Hermione heave Ron out of the Quidditch pitch and down to Hagrid's hut. The scene in Hagrid's is once again very similar to the movie, however the show has another chance to give justice to Ron, as in the movie Hermione already knows the term mudblood. This time it's Ron who gives the explanation of what mudblood means, and he voices his concerns and opinions about pureblood supremacy, backing up Hermione in the process. After the scene in Hagrid's hut, we cut to the trio entering the castle before they are accosted by Professor McGonagall, who tells Harry and Ron what their detentions will be that evening. Harry will be helping Lockhart with his fan mail, and Ron will be helping Filch clean trophies. I really want the show to include what Ron's detention is, as in this detention, Ron will find a crucial piece of information that will become relevant later on in the season. We then cut to Harry in his detention with Lockhart, and it will be like the movie, with Lockhart droning on about his many achievements and his fame, before Harry suddenly hears a cold, sinister voice making threats. Harry asks Lockhart if he heard the voice too, and after Lockhart says he didn't hear anything, we focus on Harry's face, looking shocked and confused. We cut to black to end sequence 2. Sequence 3 of the episode features a scene that was left completely out of the movie, the Deathday Party. We open with the first of this season's Hogwarts changing motifs. Similar to season 1, we will see leaves turning brown and Halloween decorations popping up around the school. We will also see a Quidditch team in the distance practicing in the rain, which then turns out to be the Gryffindor team, as we cut to Harry trudging through the castle splattered with mud, carrying his Nimbus 2000. He then bumps into nearly headless Nick, who is completely distracted by a letter he is reading, and after Harry asks him what's wrong, Nick tells him that he's been denied entry to the Headless hunt. But before Harry can reply, Mrs. Norris comes skulking around the corner. Before Harry can escape, he is then ambushed by Filch, who is outraged about the mess Harry is causing and proceeds to take him to his office to fill out an incident report. After they enter Filch's office, we hear a huge crash on the ceiling, and Filch goes streaking out of the office, shouting about Peeves, leaving Harry alone. Harry then notices an envelope sitting on Filch's desk, and being his usual nosy self, he picks up the letter and starts to read, seeing that it is a quick spell form for failed witches and wizards. I think it's really important to include this information, as just like with the introduction to Justin Finch Fletchley, it provides crucial details as to why certain people are getting targeted throughout the season. Harry then hears Filch returning to his office and hastily throws the letter back on the table, but when Filch comes back, he suspects Harry has been reading his letter and promptly throws him out of the office. Once he leaves, Harry then sees nearly headless Nick again, and he tells Harry that he convinced Peeves to smash the vanishing cabinet, that's 2 times in 2 episodes this has been mentioned by the way, above Filch's office, so Harry could escape. Harry thanks Nick and asks him if he can do anything to help, and this is when Nick invites Harry to his Deathday Party. Harry says he will go, and we then arrive at the climax scene of this episode, with a cut to the trio entering the dungeons to the party. I really want this to be the absolute standout moment of this episode, with the eeriness of the ghosts drifting around and dancing, with musical saws playing a terrifying rendition of a popular classical melody, although I'm not really sure which one. We'll definitely see the tables full of rotten food.
I expect they've let it rot to give it a stronger flavour, said Hermione knowledgeably, pinching her nose and leaning closer to look at the putrid haggis.
And Peeves zooming around causing chaos, especially when we get our first introduction to Moaning Myrtle, who promptly zooms out of the dungeon after Peeves starts pelting her with mouldy peanuts. I'm not sure if there's going to be time to actually introduce the Headless Hunt, as there's been a lot in this episode already, but I would like to see it if it is possible. The episode then reaches its climax as Harry hears that cold, sinister voice again, and streaks out of the dungeon with Ron and Hermione in tow. The camera frantically follows them as they round corners and sprint up staircases before they finally burst into an empty corridor. They then see something shining in red on the wall, and as they approach, they see it is a message written in blood saying,
"The Chamber of Secrets has been opened. Enemies of the air, beware."
We cut to black, and the credits roll. In the book, this isn't the end of the chapter, as they obviously go on to see Mrs. Norris, and hundreds of students then arrive. However, I personally think this is a great cliffhanger to end on, and a perfect place to jump straight back into the action in the next episode. I also know there was a lot to pack into this episode, and unfortunately I did have to cut a few conversations and moments here and there for time purposes. However, this is the last time where 3 chapters will be crammed into 1 episode. So what do you think? Was this how you would envision the reveal of the writing on the wall, or would you have preferred a different ending to this episode? You can let me know your suggestions down in the comments. Once again, remember to like the video and subscribe, and I will see you next time when I plan out my vision for Harry Potter Season 2, Episode 4.